Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. A warm and hearty welcome to the Voice of the Cape on 91.3 FM with myself, Quanita Kamaar. And yes, we are in our special program, being Qalboen Saleem, and with myself, Quanita Kamaar. And I'm very delighted and honored to be in your home, and as well as, just sharing the information that we have prepared for you today. And as we are in our program, it is part 2 of our series, very excited, which we launched last week, and that is the Fajr Sisters Color of Self-Discovery series. And our guest in studio once again for this week is Fatima Altalib, and she's the founder of the Fajr Sisters. She is born in Cape Town, South Africa. She's lived in different parts of the world, but she's also studied at the prestigious International Islamic University of Malaysia, where she obtained her BA Honours in Quran and Sunnah Studies, as well as her Masters in Education, mashallah. And it is a great honour, Fatima, having you back with us this week. Assalamu alaikum to you.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm honoured to be here.
So yes, we had quite a very interesting start to our series last week, and a lot of engagement coming through from our listeners on the WhatsApp line,
Yes.
as well as some new listeners who was tuned in. I recall last week we had one lady, I think her name was Fatima as well, all the way from Mauritius. So I'm really
Yes.
hoping that she's listening in today as well. Please do also, share this information with those who can benefit from it, inshallah. But now last week we touched on the topic of, growing older, and that was a very interesting discussion that we have. And this week we are moving on to a new topic, and that is pertaining to, pain and healing. And the theme of this episode is the stains of pain, healing yourself. Give us an overview on this particular theme for this week and what exactly we will be going through in terms of our content for today.
Okay, let me go through a short recap of last week. So last week we talked about a human experience that unites us all, which is growing older. And we talked about embracing growing older with a beginner's mindset. And that every moment in life, whether we are 20 or 90, is an opportunity to explore ourselves and our purpose and live that purpose. And so inshallah this week, we are going to talk about another human experience that unites us all, and that is pain.
Yes.
So we're going to talk about what is pain and why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us go through pain? What does He have to say about pain? And then we're going to talk about what are the causes of pain and how do we treat that pain and heal from that pain.
Inshallah. So I think this topic is relevant to different situations. And just before we actually came on air, I shared a story with you, Fatima, about a mother who is a single mom, and she's raising her children alone because she lost her husband not so long ago. And her situation is challenging, for us who's not in that situation. When you look at that, you'll think to yourself, wow, I thought my challenges are actually really difficult. And you look at a mother raising a child, perhaps who's not well, who needs that extra attention, and then also not feeling well yourself as a mother, and having to deal with the loss of a loved one, your partner, your husband, the father of your child. And, that I'm sure is very painful.
Yeah, exactly. Pain is an inevitable part of the human experience. But the thing about pain is a message. Pain is a messenger. Pain is a purifier. Pain is a teacher. Pain is a tool. And just like you and your life, pain has a purpose.
Mm.
And so why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually make us go through pain? He wants to test our faith, and I'm going to share with you a few ayahs that really talks about that. But basically, He wants to test us, He wants to teach us, and He wants to strengthen us. SubhanAllah, this ayah was in my mind throughout the whole week as I was reflecting on the topic that we're going to speak about. And then today, as I was playing Surah Al-Baqarah, the ayahs, jumped out at me, and what amazed me was not the ayah itself that I had in mind, but the verses of Quran that come after that ayah.
Okay.
So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَمْ حَسِبْتُمْ أَن تَدْخُلُوا الْجَنَّةِ, do you think that you will be admitted into paradise, وَلَمَّا يَأْتِكُمْ مَثَلُ الَّذِينَ خَلَوْا مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ, without being tested like those before you? مستهم البأساء والضراء وزلزلوا حتى يقول الرسول والذين آمنوا معه متى نصر الله. They were afflicted with suffering and adversity and were so violently shaken that even the messenger and the believers with him cried out, when will Allah's help come? When will victory come? ألا إن نصر الله قريب. Indeed, Allah's help is always near. And what amazed me were the ayahs after that, because I like to, whenever I'm talking about something, I like to connect it to action. So there's the theory, but okay, what does that mean in action?
Exactly.
What does it mean Allah's help is always near? What must I do in that situation? If Allah's help is near, but I'm feeling all this pain. يَسْأَلُونَكَ مَاذَا يُنْفِقُونَ. That's the next ayahs. They ask you, O Prophet, what should we spend in? And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, whatever donations you give are for your parents, your relatives, the orphans, the poor, the needy travelers, and whatever good you do is certainly well known to Allah. And subhanAllah, when those ayahs caught my attention this morning, they really moved me, because subhanAllah, there's something so amazing when you're going through pain and yet you still try to make someone smile.
True.
You still try to, and that's there's a power there, there's a healing in that itself. And healing happens when we come together as a community. Like that mother whose son has cerebral palsy, she has a heart condition, her husband just passed on. We heal her, she reaches out and she heals us, and together we heal together, and that is Allah's victory on us, and that is a test of our faith. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions right after that how He has made fighting to be an obligation. And then He says, وَعَسَىٰ أَن تَكْرَهُوا شَيْئًا وَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ. And perhaps you dislike something and it is good for you. And so that's the perspective that I'm going to take you through, dear listeners, today. How is pain actually something really good for us on this human life experience?
SubhanAllah. Yeah, that's very profound words there from our guest today, the founder of the Fajr Sisters. And this is our series, The Colors of Self-Discovery. And this week we touch on the topic of pain and healing yourself. We will be heading out for commercial soon. And when we return, we bring you more. Stay tuned. La ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Qalboen Saleem on this beautiful day, mashallah, with myself, Quanita Kamaar, and in studio, our guest today is Fatima Altalib. She's the founder of the Fajr Sisters and is presenting such a beautiful series on the colors of self-discovery. And for this week, we are touching on a painful topic, but also looking at ways of how you can actually heal yourself, inshallah. And Fatima, before the break, you unpacked or shared some ayah in the Quran, and now we're moving on to, a beautiful story on which you've also extracted from the Quran. So I'll hand over to you. Bismillah.
So let me just give reference to the previous ayahs in case you want to write it down and reference it later. So the ayahs that I'd shared before the break was Surah Al-Baqarah, which is Surah 2 in the Quran, verses 214 to 216. And now I'm going to share with you a bit more about what does Allah say about pain. Allah really sees your pain, dearest brothers and sisters. He sees your pain. And here's a story in Surah Al-Qasas, which is the 28th surah, verses 10 to 13, where he talks about the pain of Musa alayhi salam's mother when Fir'aun was killing all the baby boys. and she was afraid that her boy's life was going to be taken. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inspired her to put her baby in a basket and put him on the Nile River. And you can imagine what that must feel like. It probably went against every single instinct she had as a mother.
Yes.
You know, to protect your child, to keep your child close,
True.
to hold your child. And so Allah says, وَأَصْبَحَ فُؤَادُ أُمِّ مُوسَى فَارِغًا. The heart, the fu'ad, which is the emotional heart of the mother of Musa, was empty. It ached. So Allah is acknowledging her aching in those moments. إِن كَادَتْ لَتُبْدِ بِهِ. So if it was not for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, she almost gave away his identity. If it was not for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, أن ربطنا على قلبها ولولا أن ربطنا على قلبها. If Allah didn't tie her heart, then she would have given away Musa's identity. If Allah did not reassure her heart in that moment.
Yes.
And then he goes on to say that, you know, the Musa's sister sort of followed Musa as he's going on the Nile. And subhanallah, Asya, may Allah be pleased with her.
Ameen.
Actually, as an activist, another woman who went through so much pain. So you see the connection of women with different stories and how their stories of pain actually connect in the same story. There's Musa's mother who had to let go of her young child. And then there's Asya, who's under the abusive tyrant Fir'aun as his wife.
Yeah.
And she, in an act of protest and activism, actually picks up this child and somehow convinces the tyrant Fir'aun, let's take this son as our son, don't kill him.
Yes. Subhanallah.
And in that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made that no woman was able to breastfeed Musa besides his mother. So Allah returned Musa to his mother. The sister said, hey, you know, I know of someone who may be able to breastfeed him. And Allah actually says, وَحَرَّمْنَا عَلَيْهِ الْمَرَاضِعِ, right? So we caused him to refuse all wet nurses. فَرَدَدْنَاهُ إِلَىٰ أُمِّهِ كَيْ تَقَرَّ عَيْنَهَا. So we returned him to his mother so that he may be the coolness of her eyes. وَلَا تَحْزَنْ. And so that she may not feel sad. لَا تَحْزَنْ. Where else do we hear La Tahsan? When the Prophet ﷺ is telling his companion Abu Bakr when they left their beloved home in Mecca, and there are these fugitives, you know, people are out to kill them. La tahzan, inna Allah ma'ana. Don't be sad, Allah is with us. And that's Allah's perspective on pain, and the perspective we need to have. That pain is actually a sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy, of His compassion, of His wisdom and His subtlety. And it's through those super painful, heartbreaking moments in our lives where we really truly see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for who He is. And for the compassionate Lord that He is. So now we're going to break down the 3 different ways in which we need to look at pain or study pain. Because if we want to know how to treat our pain, we need to know where it comes from. So the first way of categorizing, Yasmin Mugahid in her book Healing the Emptiness describes 5 different categories for pain. And the thing is, all the parts of us are interconnected. Our soul, our nafs, our mind, our heart, all of them are interconnected. So when you're studying this, and as I'm sharing it, try to study it and reflect on it for yourself. The first one is biological. So do you know that even when you're dehydrated, the hormones in your body change and your cortisol levels, which is your stress hormone, increases? So even the food and the drink that you eat affect the way you're feeling and your emotions and how you cope with your emotions. It could also be that you're born with a certain disease, or it could be, you know, you're going through the natural menstrual cycle. All of those things affect our pain and our level of pain. So what's the treatment? Lifestyle, your diet, exercise, or even medical treatment. You know, sometimes that is the solution, or one of the solutions, and it shouldn't be frowned upon in that situation. You can't just tell someone, oh, you need to increase your iman, when there's actually a biological reason behind what they're going through. The second one is environmental, and I want to spend a little bit, maybe more time on this particular one. If you are in a toxic environment, for example, your son is on drugs and he's becoming really toxic. He's sucking all your energy. He's sucking all your resources. Maybe he's even becoming abusive. Here's the thing. There's this myth on what we understand sabr to be, patience to be. We think it's about being passive and we must just take on whatever Allah put our way. Khalas, I must just keep silent and Allah will reward me in the Jannah. No, my dearest sister or dearest brother. No. Allah does not want us to remain passive. He wants us to take action. That is true sabr. Sabr is when you're in a situation, whatever situation, a painful situation, that pain is a messenger. It's saying, hey, make a change, take action. And so if you're in that toxic environment, don't expect that pain to ever go away until you take an action that helps save you away from that environment. And yes, there's going to be consequences to that too. But imagine the long term.
Yes.
And Allah, you see it in Asia's story I just mentioned. She was an activist under abuse, but she said, "Najjini min al-qawmi al-zalimin." Save me from the oppressive people. She took action. Hajar alayhi salam left in the middle of the desert with her baby son. She wasn't just like, okay, Allah put me here. This is what Allah decreed for me. So let me just, sit and wait until things get better. She ran from Safa to Marwa under the heat of the sun. Not once, not twice, 7 times until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted her an opening and the water of Zamzam gushed forth. Yusuf alayhi salam, who was child trafficked by his own brothers who threw him in the well. He took the opportunity to grow as a person and became so confident and strong throughout his whole journey that when he was taken out of the prison, he told the king, I'll be able to look after your crop. Make me the financial manager of the kingdom of Egypt. He had that confidence because he built himself up. He built his skills. He built his knowledge. He built who he was as a person. And in the end of the story, when his dream comes true, he says, Ya abati, this is my dream coming true. And look how kind Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was. And he describes his child trafficking. He describes the how he was seduced. He described everything, that how he was put in prison, all in a positive light, or how Allah put all these things to help make my dreams come true. Subhanallah. Maryam alayhi salam, in the middle of giving birth to a son who she hadn't expected as a virgin, going through that pain, wishing that she didn't exist, all alone, no support, no house, no midwives, no doctors. Allah tells her, shake the tree, shake a palm tree in the middle of giving birth. And then Allah sent the dates forth. You have to put the effort. You have to show up. So environment does play a role to our pain. Sabr is not about being passive, taking action.
Yeah, no, definitely taking action. And it just made me also think, sometimes, like you were saying, and I mean, like not so long ago, we had the 16 days of activism of no violence against women and children. And that is something that we observe annually. And usually it's only for 16 days. But, every day there's a woman or a child, or even men also, because we're always just focusing on the women and the children. But we know also for a fact that there might be men who's also going through difficulty.
Yeah. I mean, Yusuf alayhi salam, he's a prophet who went through that abuse, right?
Exactly.
So on both sides. And I think the message here is, it's not okay. It's not acceptable. And you never have to accept that. And Allah doesn't want you to accept injustice. Allah doesn't want you to go through abuse. Yes, He puts us through pain, but He doesn't want you to suffer. And that leads me to the third one, which is mental. The thoughts we have, the stories we tell ourselves affect how we live our lives. So if you have limited beliefs and negative thoughts, like I'm not good enough, so this is all I deserve, or I'll never be able to get what I wanted. I've been making dua for all these years and it's never coming true. Or Allah will never forgive me.
Yes.
Those thoughts are so painful. So I want you to catch yourself when you're having those thoughts and reframe it. Reframe those negative thoughts. And I have a technique. If you go onto the fajrsisters.wordpress.com, you'll find an article called The 7 Thinking Hats. And it actually takes you through a process of how you can reframe those negative thoughts.
Yes.
So that is the mental. And then to conclude, there's emotional and there's spiritual. So the emotional pain comes to us like waves. And usually what we do is we either suppress it, we escape it.
Yes.
We don't deal with it. We don't feel it. And this is another thing. We need to feel our pain. We have to feel it. Feel it, and then you can process it.
There's a question, not a question, but we are encouraging our listeners to also interact with us. And perhaps, when you are sending through your message on the WhatsApp line, it's because you can relate to what we are discussing in this particular program today. So we encourage you to send through your messages on the WhatsApp line 0829 913 913. Let us know how you have actually processed your pain. And I also want to also bring into the conversation just this one message that's come through. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I feel this program is directed to me today. It's a sister that's messaging in, and she's lost her husband 12 years ago. 12 years ago. And she says, Alhamdulillah, pain is as if the wounds was open, and now for the past 15 days I've been going through so much difficulty with dunya issues, Alhamdulillah. And on this topic of maybe you've lost a loved one, or you maybe lost your wealth, or you've gone through a loss. And I remember we had a guest on, I had this one guest on, I think it was a psychologist, and she was making reference to how when at a certain time of the year, she always feels a certain way because it's like the anniversary of the death of a loved one, or it's in that time that she experienced difficulty, or she experienced difficulty. And it just made me think, reading this message now.
I completely relate. And that's the thing, grief, okay? There's no timeline to grief. Pain never really leaves us. Grief never really leaves us. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expands your chest so that over time, if you're doing the work, that is, He allows you, He gives you the strength to cope with that pain better and stronger. So you become stronger through the process, and the next test that comes, which is even more severe, you're now stronger to cope with that test. And you grow. And when you grow closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you're elevated in the sight. So that is what pain is. It's really there to strengthen us. Why is it that a baby, when he teethes, he goes through pain? Why does Allah put an innocent baby through pain? To strengthen that baby.
And to strengthen the bond of the parents or the mother, because that child is helpless. They can't communicate or tell you, oh, the pain is here or there. And as a mother, you need to kind of like read into the signs and try to figure out without actually having a conversation with. And that's absolutely amazing. So I think that is just something to bring into the conversation as well. But on another note, while you were sharing the story of Asiya and all the women, in our history in Islam, and it made me think about some of the other prophets who had family members, because you're speaking about that toxic, environment, and it made me think about some of the other prophets whose loved ones did not follow them.
Oh yeah, I mean in the same surah where Allah talks about Asiya and Maryam being good examples for women, He talks about the wives of Nuh alayhi salam and Lut, and how they are the opposite of that. Both of them were toxic, actually very toxic in some ways. I mean, Lut's wife basically encouraged things that go completely against our values as Muslims and went completely against His message, and Allah they ended up facing their consequences.
Yes.
So yes, it could take place but even Allah says about Nuh's son, for example, he's not your son, because for years and years and years he'd been preaching, and his son went against what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said. He went against the truth out of arrogance. So I think there's a message there. It's not like, okay, just like, cut off your family members, but you are allowed to take action. You are allowed, whatever takes you away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that shows that there's a problem there. You are allowed to set boundaries. That's the key. Set boundaries.
And before we take a break, again, I want to ask you this question, because sometimes you're so stuck in that emotion and you do that negative self-talk. So, like, perhaps your advice is on, like, kind of like using the Quran as a means to empower you and uplift you in that regard.
For sure. Wow, the Quran, dearest listeners and dearest Qanita, it reframes your mind 24/7. Whenever you read it, it really just changes your perspective on life. It constantly reminds you of why you're here, who you are, how precious you are to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So build that connection with the Quran, because it's your personal love letter from Allah to you, to your soul. And you will find, I encourage you, just open the Quran to any random page. You're going through a difficulty, open the Quran to any page of your choosing. If you don't understand the Arabic, read the translation and see how whatever it is Allah put there was exactly what you needed to hear in that moment.
Subhanallah. I see there's more messages coming through, but we'll bring that into the conversation when we return from the ad break. Stay tuned.
La ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah, ma lana rabbun siwa. La ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Qalboen Saleem on this beautiful day, mashallah. We can really say that we are blessed, you know, when you look around you, wherever you are, there's always good in everything. And our topic today speaks about pain and how you can heal through that. And our guest today is Fatima Altalib, the founder of Fajr Sisters, and she's also presenting this beautiful series titled Colors of Self-Discovery. And it made me think, in our first, episode, you were speaking about how this whole idea of colors of self-discovery came about. It just made me reflect on that moment you shared, where you were in a different country and you were trying to connect, and then this Allah guided you to actually, come up with this particular, I wouldn't say series, but you obviously Allah encouraged you or guided you to do this, and now we are presenting this to the masses. And I can really see, based on the interaction on the WhatsApp line, that people can relate, and the stories that are coming through are quite painful. And shukran again for interacting with us on the WhatsApp line, and many people saying shukran for beautiful program. And then one listener is basically asking, how can we catch or get a copy of the program? Can you post it on your Facebook page? So I think we can also share your social media handles maybe at the end of the program, where you can actually listen to the interview, and then we're also repeating this program as well. But I'll share that details with you in a little while before we wrap up. So some people are listeners saying that she's been diagnosed with PTSD. So and it's become very difficult. Okay, she has a difficult background, and that links into our conversation today about pain and your environment and your mental state, emotional and spiritual as well, all connected.
Yeah, subhanAllah. Jazakumullah khairan, sisters, for actually and listeners for sharing your stories. They're so powerful, and I think we need to actually open that discussion. So I really hope that we do get more sessions where we can really bring in all of you, and we have this conversation, because this is the first step. So I'm going to talk about something that will definitely link into PTSD. Let me just complete the fifth of the 5 categories according to Yasmin Mujahid, and then I'm going to go into the second categorization and the third categorization. That's going to touch a bit on PTSD as well. So Yasmin Mujahid said that there are 5 causes of pain. One is biological, the second is environmental, the third is mental, the fourth is emotional, and the fifth is spiritual. Your belief system affects you and how you cope with your pain. And a part of that is also attachment. So like I said, pain is a messenger. It's saying there's something wrong, you need to do something about it. And oftentimes when we are attached to people or to situations or to things, and that is taken away from us or challenged, then the pain comes in. And that's just a sign that maybe you were too attached there, and you need to then let go of that thing and reattach to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So again, it's a rahmah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes. When Allah takes people or things, or when someone betrays you, or when it's all just signs, hey, you're not here in this dunya for that person or for that thing. You're here for me. You're here to submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you will be rewarded for that submission.
Ameen.
So I heard a story the other day of someone who had actually wanted to leave the folds of Islam because someone had told her that she basically she skipped a salah of hers, and they told her that your salahs will never be accepted, or you've already left the folds of Islam because you missed your salah. And so she asked the sheikh, she was like, how can I worship a Lord that makes it so difficult for us and then punishes us on top of it, like when we're not able to fulfill these things? And so again, reframe your mindset. That's what I'm trying to do. See Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala really for the true compassionate Lord He is. Have husn al-dhan in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah says, Ya ayyuhal insan, oh man, oh mankind, oh human creature, oh weak, vulnerable human creature. ما غرك بربك الكريم. What has deceived you against your Lord, your nurturer, your sustainer, who is the most generous? الذي خلقك فسواك فعدلك, who created you, fashioned you, and perfected your design. Pain helps you remember. It helps you remember that you are still alive, that the nerves in your body are still working. It helps you remember that you can still feel, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always there. So I want to move on to the second categorization, because this leads us to one of the biggest causes of pain, and that is the feeling of despair. I was mentioning some of those negative thoughts we might have. Allah will never forgive me, or I'll never get an opening. This situation will last forever. Like, I can't take it anymore. I don't want to exist anymore. And those feelings of despair, that loss of hope, that leads us to so much pain. And it's all in the thought process. It's the way you're seeing the situation. So you need to reprogram it. And what is despair? Basically, it leads to depression. Then we have expectations. When we put our expectations on people, on a certain situation, and then they break your expectation, they disappoint you, that's super painful. And again, what is that? That is anxiety. Because we are anxious for the future, or we are anxious because we expect certain things from people. So we're putting our expectations on how we want the world to be, or how we want life to be for ourselves, or for our relationship, or for whatever, and that leads to anxiety. And then the third one is attachment. When we are attached in an unhealthy way to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that can lead to addiction, which is the third form of pain. So again, if we use the categories that I spoke about, Yasmin Mujahid's, like, your lifestyle, you mustn't remain passive, you need to reframe your negative thoughts, all those things can help you. But the first step is just understanding where the pain comes from. Because once you understand it, then you're able to actually deal with it. So I'm going to go to the third category that's going to deal with a sister with PTSD as well. And I think all of us.
But I'm going to ask you to hold your thoughts there, because I don't want to interrupt you when you get into that conversation. So let us break for now, and when we return, inshallah, we continue.
La ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah, ma lana rabbun siwa. La ilaha illallah, la ilaha.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Qalboen Saleem. It is definitely a very, very insightful and powerful conversation we have this afternoon with our guest, Fatima Altalib, the founder of the Fajr Sisters, and presenting the Color of Self-Discovery series with us today. And shukran to you, the listener, for interacting on the WhatsApp line 0829913913. That is the WhatsApp number. Let us know your name, which part of the world or locally or abroad you are messaging us from. We'd love to hear from you. So now, Fatima, before the break, you were going to go into a bit more detail, so I'm going to hand over to you. Bismillah.
Okay, Bismillah. We don't have much time, so I may be a bit fast here, but don't worry, dear listeners. We're going to have the recording. It's going to repeat on Sunday. Also, it will be uploaded to YouTube, and I can even send you the notes if you email thefajrsisters@gmail.com. Okay, so the third categorization is the 5 childhood voices and their masks. So all of us have been through experiences, and as children we interpreted it in such a way, and that stays with us, and it creates patterns in our life. So I'm going to go through the 5 of them very quickly, and what our natural response to each one of them is, if we have it. The first one is rejection, and the ego mask that we put on with this, when that spot is hit and the spot of rejection is withdrawal, we withdraw. The second one is abandonment, and with that, the mask is codependency. So we try to attach ourselves so much to the person so they don't go away. But what happens is you end up suffocating that person and they do end up leaving you. The third one is humiliation. And the mask or the ego mask for that is that you never make yourself a priority to avoid humiliation. Number 4 is betrayal. And with that, you want to be the controller. You want to know everything and be in control of everything in fear of that betrayal. And number 5 is injustice. And with that is you're very rigid.
Yes.
So reflect on these 5. We don't have time to go into it. But this really opened my eyes. It really made me see myself and why I'm so sensitive to things that shouldn't be hurting me as much as they do hurt me sometimes. And it's because, for me, one of my childhood voices is rejection.
Oh, interesting.
And so even little things trigger that same childhood voice that comes back to me, subhanAllah. So it was very eye-opening for me to learn about that.
I think it actually makes... I'm sure people are probably sitting now and thinking, oh, I can relate to that. Maybe that's the reason I'm the way I am. And when you do that reflection, you reflect. Because now you're sharing this information and, you've shared your email address. If anyone would like to make contact with you, I'm sure they would be able to connect with you as well. But sometimes we don't think about things in this way.
Yeah.
Because we don't know. And so this program obviously is a means of guiding people to look a bit deeper into perhaps why am I, a bit distant, or why am I withdrawing from certain situations? Why am I so codependent, and so it definitely gives us food for thought to this afternoon. But I believe you have a beautiful poem that you will be reading for us this week again. And I enjoy listening to your poetry, mashallah.
Shukran so much for listening. I just want to conclude before I share the poem is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you pain to strengthen you. So I hope that everything that we discussed in this short time gives you a starting point to understand your pain in context. And when you connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Allah's intentions for you when you are experiencing pain. And with that understanding, you can explore pain and look forward to where it takes you. Because it will actually make you so much more beautiful. And even in the midst of your pain, joke with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Oh Allah, this is super painful right now, but I look forward to whatever it is you have installed to me at the end of this journey. Because He has something beautiful for you. He really does. And with that, I'm ending with a hadith and the poem. No fatigue, nor disease, nor sorrow, nor sadness, nor hurt, nor distress befalls a Muslim, even if it were a prick he received from a thorn, but that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expiates some of his sins for that. And with that I share the poem Scars of Life. Scars cover the body in every different shade. Some scars never seem to fade. Scars make you stronger, as they serve as a constant reminder of that time you shook, crying in pain, bravery you did eventually gain. Some scars seem ancient, they remind you to be patient, for the tears will dry up and the cut will clot. The mercy of Allah have you already forgot? Scars make you kinder, as they serve as a constant reminder of that time life stabbed you with its sharp blade, and Allah sent your brother to your help and aid. Some scars seem deep. They remind you that hope you should always keep. For even though there were times when you were let down, at the end you were not. The generosity of Allah have you already forgot? Scars make you wiser, as they serve as a constant reminder of that time you fell down a slope, and Allah replaced that wound with bravery, kindness, patience, and hope. Scars cover the body in every different shade, and some scars never seem to fade. فاستجاب لهم ربهم أني لا أضيع عمل عامل منكم من ذكر أو أنثى بعضكم من بعض فالذين هاجروا وأخرجوا من ديارهم وأوذوا في سبيلي وقاتلوا وقتلوا لأكفرن عنهم سيئاتهم ولأدخلنهم جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار ثوابا من عند الله والله عنده حسن الثواب. And their Lord responded to them, never will I allow to be lost the work of any worker among you, whether male or female. You are of one another. So those who immigrated or were evicted from their homes or were harmed in my cause or fought or were killed, I will surely remove from them their misdeeds, and I will surely admit them to gardens beneath which rivers flow as a reward from Allah, and Allah has with him the best reward.
MashaAllah, shukran so much to you, Fatima, for such a powerful poem, mashallah. We look forward to next week again when we have you back for our third episode. Remember the repeat, you can catch that on Sunday at 3 p.m. inshallah. Well, that there concludes our program for this afternoon. From myself, Quanita Kamaar, and our guests today, we bid you farewell. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.